Your current wife in January 2005.
I don't know relative to that tape.
In what years were you the owner of the Pod Hotel?
I don't know these.
James Webb.
I don't remember the names. Don't remember the name.
So you don't remember saying you have one of the best members?
I don't remember that.
Your current wife
this morning that perhaps your report concluded, and perhaps it did not, that the president is, quote, incapable of being held accountable. But that's not quite what happened, is it? You didn't find that he was incapable of being held accountable, did you?
I did not. Those words do not appear in my report.
They do not. But you reached a conclusion that you didn't have the evidence, but then your report continually recites these defenses. And I'm having a hard time putting the two together. If you didn't have the evidence, why do you persist in reciting these defenses?
Congressman, I wrote my report as an explanation of my decision to decline charges as to President Biden. And the way that I came up with that explanation and wrote it in my report for the Attorney General is the following. The approach that I took was a prosecutor envisioning what would be the probable outcome of trial if we charged this case, if we presented the evidence to a jury, and not only the government presenting the evidence to a jury, but what would happen if the defense lawyers also got a chance to try to poke holes in the government's case at trial. And with respect to one of the several potential defenses that I lay out in the report, one of them does focus on the president's memory-related issues. That is a defense that the president's defense lawyers may well present at trial. And a jury is going to be confronted with at least 3 separate sets of evidence relating to the president's memory. One is from the recordings in 2016 and 2017 from the ghostwriter.
But if I forgive me for interrupting, but I'm limited on time as everybody else was. But you say, I think, that the evidence suggests he is incapable of forming, or you're incapable of proving, intent. There's kind of a bit of a difference there, right? He may well have had the intent, but you could not of holding these documents, and I hate to say hiding the documents, but you couldn't prove it. So what you did instead is fell back to the various defenses that might also be asserted against you. Kind of a heap of rationale for not pursuing the president. Is that, do I have it right now?
Congressman, I think we're on the same page. I think what I'm trying to convey is that the way that prosecutors assess the strengths and weaknesses of their case is to think through, hey, in the government's case in chief, here's the evidence we're gonna present, and the jury might be with us. But that's not the end of the trial. The trial also has to include presentation from the defense lawyers.
You're correct, and I'm a lawyer. I've tried cases, so I get it. Your report is not an exoneration so much as a determination that the evidence as you saw it would not overcome the defenses that you had identified, plus whatever lack of evidence you perceived. So it's not an exoneration, is it?
The word exoneration does not appear anywhere in my report, and that is not my conclusion.
I think it's important that we refocus and remember the conclusion that you reached on the first page and in the very first sentence of your report, which was, we conclude that no criminal charges are warranted in this matter. Did I read that accurately?
You did, Congresswoman.
As someone who's participated in trials, you know that witnesses, regardless of age, often have difficulty recalling specific statements or facts when asked about them many years after those facts. So let's take a quick look at a differing witness experiencing a lapse in memory during a deposition.
Your next wife was a woman by the name of Marla Maples?
Right.
And sitting here today, do you recall what years you were married to Ms. Maples?
I'd have to get the exact dates for you. I can do that.
Am I correct that you married your current wife in January 2005?
I don't know relative to that tape.
In what years were you the owner of the Pod Hotel?
I don't know these.
James Webb.
I don't remember the names. Don't remember the name.
So you don't remember saying you have one of the best members?
I don't remember that.
Okay.
I remember you telling me, but I don't know that I said.
So I would also add that Mr. Trump told lawyers, I don't remember 35 times in his deposition for a lawsuit over Trump University. And in response to questions from special counsel Robert Mueller, he answered, did not remember or could not recall 27 times. Now, Mr. HUR, you've said today that DOJ process and regulations required you to assess whether a jury would find Mr. Biden to be a credible witness, correct?
I'm not sure that I said those words exactly, but of course, in my view, how a jury would perceive Mr. Biden if he elected to testify in his own defense at a trial. That would be part of the whole ball of wax that jurors would consider in determining whether he had willful intent in retaining or disclosing national defense information.
Sure. Do you have any reason to believe that the special counsel who investigated and charged Mr. Trump with willful retention of classified documents would have failed to make an assessment of whether the jury would find Mr. Trump to be a credible witness?
I don't have any information relating to how, I'm not qualified basically to answer that question as to what went into Mr. Smith's decision making.
But you are qualified to say what are the normal procedures followed by a special counsel, correct?
I'm familiar with the rules as set forth in the Justice Manual and my understanding of how to apply them.
And in fact, what you did.
Correct.
Okay. So I would suggest that we can all assume that the fact that Mr. Trump was charged with multiple counts of willfully concealing classified documents suggests that the special counsel in that case determined that Mr. Trump's denials are not credible. At this point, I would ask unanimous consent to enter into the record an excerpt from the committee's transcribed interview with Stephen D'Antonio, former assistant director in charge of the FBI Washington field office on July 7th, 2023, in which he explained the urgency for the FBI to retrieve and secure classified documents from Donald Trump's estate because they contained national security information that should not be viewed by anyone without the proper security clearance. Even Mr. D'Antonio himself could not view the documents given their high security clearance, despite being the assistant director in charge of the FBI Washington field office. Thank you.
Without
I yield
objection,
back.
gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from Oregon is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
First question to you is, you're a Republican?
I am, sir.
Does that stop you from a thorough and fair investigation?
I certainly hope not, and I know not.
This story is really proof of the old saying that the cover-up is worse than the crime. President Trump and President Biden handled their classified materials differently, wouldn't you say?
My report includes an assessment of the alleged facts in the pending indictment of former President Trump and a comparison to the facts that we found in this case.
But clearly the handling of these documents was night and day, correct?
Congressman, do you have a specific aspect of the handling of the documents that you have in mind?
Well, you know, President Trump intentionally took classified materials and obstructed justice to ensure that those materials wouldn't be taken from him, and he refused to work with law enforcement. Is that correct?
My report reflects no findings of obstructive conduct on the part of
Let me ask you another question. President Trump has been indicted in the U.S. District Court of Southern Florida on 40 counts related to his possession of classified documents. Is that correct?
I don't know the exact number of counts, but I know that an indictment is pending in that district.
Mr. HUR, you even wrote that after being given a number of chances to return classified documents and avoid prosecution, President Trump allegedly did oppose. And according to the indictment, he not only refused to return those documents over for many months, but he also obstructed justice by enlisting others to destroy evidence and lie about them. Compare and contrasting to President Trump turned classified documents over to the National Archives and the Department of Justice, and he consented to searching his home and other locations. Wouldn't you say that's night and day when it comes to cooperation with law enforcement?
Congressman, the report does include an analysis and a comparison of the facts that are alleged with respect to former President Trump, and does detail steps of cooperation that the president and his team took with respect to my investigation.
I would say, President Biden, you had his full cooperation in this investigation.
The report includes cooperative steps that the president took.
Would this be a factor in your decision to prosecute?
It was a factor, and I explained it as such in the report, Congressman.
And you stated that the recommendation not to prosecute had nothing to do with the Department of Justice policy not to indict the sitting president. Is that correct?
What the report says that even if it were not current Department of Justice policy that a sitting president may not be indicted on federal crimes, I would reach the same conclusion that criminal charges are not warranted.
Mr. HUR, have you set new precedent here today?
To the extent that the Department of Justice makes enforcement decisions or non-enforcement decisions in particular cases, those are precedents, those are events that future prosecutors do look to in an endeavor to make sure that federal law is applied consistently over time.
Mr. HUR, I'd say, based on your education and your career experience, you're a very, very competent prosecutor, a very, very well-prepared attorney. I'm going to ask you one more time. Does the fact that you're Republican, does that stop you from a thorough and fair investigation?
No, partisan politics had nothing to do with the work that I did or the report that I wrote or the decision that I reached.
Attorney HUR, Webster's dictionary defines senile as exhibiting a decline of cognitive ability, such as memory associated with old age. Mr. HUR, based on your report, did you find that the president was senile?
I did not. That conclusion does not appear in my report, Congressman.
Did you ask if he had packed the boxes himself?
I believe that was one of the questions that we asked, and that is reflected in the transcript now available to the committee.
I think it's important. How would you characterize the packing of these boxes? Was it slow and meticulous, or were they packed in haste without much scrutiny at all?
I don't recall off the top of my head exactly how he characterized it, but I think the gist of the evidence is that the manner in which files were packed up and moved out at the end of the Obama administration was it was in something of a rushed manner.
Who discovered these boxes? It was Patrick Moore, is that correct?
Correct. One of the president's personal counsel.
And did Mr. Moore have some type of active security clearance at the time?
No.
How about the executive assistant at the Penn Biden Center?
No.
On page 265 of your
report.
report.
I'm sorry, Congressman, I may have misspoken there. I am not certain whether or not that executive assistant had an active security clearance at the time.
And you declined charges because in summarizing your analysis, you couldn't prove beyond a reasonable doubt that retention of the documents was willful.
Correct, sir.
Very good. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentlelady from Pennsylvania is recognized.